Welcome to the Team Engagement Podcast, where leaders of teams share their insights. We discuss 6 questions in less than 9 minutes because leaders know how to be concise. Let's go ahead and jump right into it. First question, in a few sentences, tell us who you are and what you do.
Sure. In a few sentences, my name is Kristine Ashcraft. I am formerly CEO of YouScript, recently acquired by Invitae. We are a precision medicine software company that provides real-time drug and dose optimization guidance to personalize medications right in the clinical workflow.
Boy, that is a big mouthful. Well, that is a lot right
It
there.
was still 2 sentences though.
It was very good.
Long
But
sentences.
you used a lot of big words there that throw me off, but that's great.
Yeah, I went to graduate school.
There
You have to
go.
pay for that with big words later.
You got to get your money's worth. Question number 2. What's the best thing about working with a team?
Yeah, I think, they say it takes a village to raise a child. I think the same thing is true about creating things that deliver a lot of value in the world. And we all bring different skills to life and to work. And I think one of the key advantages of a team is it enables people to really focus on their strengths. Whereas if you don't have a team, you often have to, battle through your weaknesses to do things. And so one of the great things about being on a team is you can leverage so many strengths to build something really meaningful.
Love that. Thank you. Question number 3. I often hear from other leaders of teams that it can be a challenge to get team members engaged. Tell me your thoughts on that.
I think that it depends on the day. I mean, people are human. And so I think one of the things you have to acknowledge is that people are going to have days when they need to take time off. They have children, they have parents, there are other things going on. And so if you enter in with that thought and treat them as adults that sometimes need to allow for that, I think more globally, people are actually usually pretty easy to motivate as long as you make the goals very clear. I've been very lucky my entire career. I have worked in mission-driven companies with mission-driven cultures. And I think because of that, the motivation factor is not as large. But I think the other thing, though, is, sometimes when people aren't motivated, it's because there's something going on in their daily lives, and you need to make sure you give them the flexibility to take care of what they need to take care of.
Great insight. I really like that. Thank you. Question number 4. What other piece of advice would you give to leaders of teams?
Yes. So I would say back to the mission-driven culture, and I think that you can come into a team or you can create a team, but it's very important to understand what the underlying culture of the company is as well as the team. How are we going to communicate? What is most important to us? What do we roll back to when we're making decisions? So at YouScript, for example, one of the things I would often say is, what would you want us to deliver information on if this was what a physician or a pharmacist was going to use to provide medication decisions for your loved ones, right? So if you want it to behave in this way, what decisions are you going to make to drive that behavior? So making sure that you have the frameworks in place so that people can do their own thing and have the flexibility to make their own decisions. I think it's very important to establish what the long-term goal is and also what the short-term goals are to get people there, to clearly define what their role in it is, but then to step back and let them get from point A to point B once you've established what point B is, so that people have the ability to shine and step into their role. I think it's very important to build a diverse team. Diversity matters. I think one of my biggest pet peeves is looking at the management team on a website and seeing a bunch of older white men in a row. I'm like, really? You couldn't hire a single person that wasn't an old white man? But I think that unfortunately we have unconscious bias that is built in, and we tend to like people that remind us of ourselves. And so you need to be really aware of that in your hiring process, your resume review process, your interview process, because the more of a diverse team that you build, the more perspectives they can bring, and the more likely you are to have a better team and a better offering on the market. I think it's also vitally important to have a lessons learned. So after, there's sprints in software, but after projects, sitting back, okay, what do we do well? But also, what didn't go so well, and what can we learn from that? And not from the aspect of, Bob, you did something wrong, you're bad. But hey, we all make mistakes. We're all human. Come at it from that angle. And then figure out what we need to do to improve. If it's just a one-off thing, it is what it is, or do we actually have to update our processes or protocols, or is there something we can do better in the future? So making sure that you have a lessons learned, and also celebrating both the small and big things. Like, it's so easy to just be like, work, especially when you're excited about what you're doing. Our mission at YouScript was to end avoidable adverse drug events. And it still is. We're part of a larger culture at Invitae that wants to make genetics part of mainstream medicine. When you're all behind a mission and driving towards the same thing, or even if you're not, stop and celebrate the wins. Stop and celebrate them, whether they're small or large. I'd mentioned this a little bit earlier, but I think the other thing is, when you establish those goals and you tell people what success looks like, step back and let them figure out how to get from A to B by themselves. I have found that when you show people what success looks like, they tend to step and grow into roles if you give them that opportunity. I think you also need to be aware that if you give that kind of opportunity, you do still need structure. So I like to have weekly one-on-ones. Bi-weekly one-on-ones with some people are fine as well, but make sure you're checking in with your team and that you have open communication channels. And make sure there are other ways to communicate if for some reason they're having problems with a teammate or with you. So who can they go to, or how can they anonymously give feedback if there are things going on? Because lack of communication is probably the worst thing that you want in a team environment. So the better job you can do fostering good communication, the better off you're going to be. I'm trying to think. There's so many things you can clearly say about teams, but I think the other thing to repeat is just remember that, people are adults and they're smart, driven people, and they like to be treated that way. I hate, cultures where they're like, you need to clock in, clock out, and it's you managed yourself in college. Like, you had to go to class, you had to turn in your homework, you did well if you're if you're advancing in your career. So I think putting the kind of restrictions that some people put on is just silly. Like, let people shine, let them be adults, and it will work out. So.
Wow, great pieces of information, such great advice, and just so many good things in there. Thank you. That was fantastic. Question number 5. What other successful team leaders, such as yourself, would you like to recognize that have had a positive influence in your life?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I was thinking about this, and clearly I could have a super long list, but I'm going to call out one woman in particular, Carla Corcoran. She was on my board of directors at YouScript. I think she's on the board of like the Girl Scout Association of Washington. But over the course of the time that she was serving on my board, I of course met a number of people that she had worked with at different times in her career. And all of them said that, she was the best leader that they'd ever had. And I'm like, well, why do people say things like that about some people and not about others? And I think she's very approachable. She was very clear in what success looked like and gave them the ability to grow in their roles. And it's very clear that she cares about people both personally and professionally. It's not like you come, you do this job here, and that's all you are. The acknowledgement that you're an entire human being with a lot of other facets to your life.
Wow, great example, and obviously a wonderful lady that you've had an opportunity to get to know. That's great. Thank you. Well, final question. Tell us about your first job.
Okay, well, I mean, clearly my very first job was babysitting. I think like most people that are latchkey kids like me, they used to let us babysit before they even let kids be alone these days. But I think the most interesting first job I had, my uncle and my father ran a central vacuum system business. So I used to install central vacuum systems, and also at conferences, I would show how they work with this bowling ball at like home shows, like sucking up the bowling ball with the central vac to show the power, which is kind of fun and different. But,
Well, very much so. That's a new one for me. I've not heard that one. So I get a lot of paper boys and I get lawn and those kinds of things, and
yeah,
babysitting comes up, but that's a new one. So that's great.
but my job sucked the most. Ha ha, bad joke. Yeah.
That's good. I like that. That's a
Yeah.
great fun. Thank you for
Yeah.
sharing that. Well, Kristine, thank you so much for being on the podcast today. How can people find you?
Sure. So my company YouScript, although it's part of the Invitae umbrella now, the actual software component is still at youscript.com, youscript.com. And I'm on LinkedIn under my name, Kristine with a K, Ashcraft. Always happy to connect with people, especially other people in the precision medicine space. I am committed to catalyzing the adoption of precision medicine. Also very much committed to helping especially other women leaders or minority leaders succeed. So
Fantastic. Love that. Well, this is Sean Richards with the Team Engagement Podcast, where leaders of teams share their insights. For more ideas, you can find us on LinkedIn by searching Blue Sky Business Consulting. Thanks so much for joining us today. Have a great day.